All right, let's take a look at how to find standard deviation using a frequency table. So we know that sometimes we don't have the raw data to work with. We only have the frequency table presented to us. So let's go through this process. And it's somewhat similar to finding mean from a frequency table, but the formula is much more involved. And you are not responsible for memorizing this formula, but you are responsible for knowing how to use it when it's provided to you. All right, so the standard deviation formula is n times the sum of f times x values minus, in parentheses, the sum of f times x. That whole quantity gets squared, and then you divide by n times n minus 1, all right? So n is the total number of data values. That comes from the sum of the frequencies. On your table, you're going to be told that x comes first, f times x comes second, and f times x squared is the new piece that comes third, okay? X are your class midpoints, midpoints. All right, so we're looking at a row. Between 0 and 2 is the number 1. Between 3 and 5 is the number 4, and so on. Between 6 and 8 is a 7, 9 and 11 is a 10, 12 to 14 is a 13, okay? So next up, we're going to go through and we're going to find the f times x numbers. I'm going to do in purple. All right, so f times x means I'm doing frequency times the x value. Frequency times the x value, okay? So 20 times 1 is 20. Then I do 14 times 4 get multiplied together, and that gives me 56. Uh-oh, what's happening here? There we go. Sorry, pen stopped writing for a moment. Then I do 15 times 7 is 105. 2 times 10 is 20. 1 times 13 is 13. And I'm going to need to add all of these numbers together. If I add them all together, I'm going to get 214. And as far as the formula is concerned, that's the sum of the f times x numbers. That's written right here, sum of f times x, okay? So that number is going to go in that place in the formula. It's going to get squared. All right. Next up, we're going to take a look at the f times x squared numbers. F times x squared means f times x times another x. Well, here's f times x. Here's another x. If I multiply those together, I get f times x, or f times x squared. So I'm just multiplying the numbers that are next to each other. All right, so I'm doing 20. 1 times 20 is 20. Then the next one, I'm doing 4 times 56 is 224. Then I'm doing 7 times 105 equals 735. Then I'm doing 10 times 20 equals 200. Then I'm doing 13 times 13 equals 169. And I'm going to add all of those numbers together to get 1,348. That is the sum of the f times x squared numbers, so that's going to take the place of this in the formula, okay? So that's that value. And then the last value I need is n, which is the number of data values. Well, the number of data values is related to the sum of the frequencies right here, okay? So if I add all of those together, we know the number of data values comes from, well, the frequencies. So this is 52, so this is n equals 52. All right, so now how do I type all of this into the formula itself? So I'm going to do standard deviation equals the square root of a fraction. I tend to write in all my n values first, so I start off with a 52. And then the denominator, I'm going to have 52 times n minus 1 is 52 minus 1, that's 51. Then I'm going to fill in what n is being multiplied by up top. So I'm doing n times that sum of f times x squared. That's all my green numbers. So that's the 1348. And then I'm going to take away a number squared. And that number is all my purple numbers, the f times x numbers, the 214. Okay. So now the question becomes, how do I type this into a calculator? My recommendation is to continue writing the square root for the next line and figure out your numerator as one number, figure out your denominator as one number. So focusing on the denominator, 52 times 51 on a calculator is 2,652. And then for this part up top here, this piece, you can type it into a calculator exactly the way you see it. You'll type in 52 parentheses 1,348, close the parentheses, and then do minus 214 to the second power. You can use the x squared button, or you could just type in minus 214 times 214. The calculator will do order of operations in the right order for you there. So you should get a numerator of 24,300. Okay. And then you're going to type in the square root. So to do a square root, you hit the second button, then the x squared button, which is near the 7. It's diagonal up from the 7, if I remember correctly. And then I'm going to type in 24,300 divided by 2652. Your decimal should come out to 3.027, and it will keep going. But because our data values here were all whole numbers, we're going to just round to 1 decimal place. So this, I'm going to take a look at, whoopsies, the 2 and ask myself, how does it round the 0? 2 rounds down, so my final answer is going to be that S equals 3.0. So that's how I calculate standard deviation from a frequency table. Again, the blank table will be provided with the headings of x, f times x, and f times x squared. You're responsible for knowing how to come up with these numbers. You're responsible for knowing how to plug the numbers into the formula, but you are not responsible for having this formula memorized. It would be provided to you on a test. All right, so that's standard deviation from a frequency table.